Thank you. President of the Security Council, distinguished members of the Council, Madam Benita Diop, African Union Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking the President of the Security Council for convening this meeting on women, peace and security in the Sahel, as well as for Sweden's leadership on this issue during the country's time in the Security Council. Yesterday, I returned from a joint UN African mission to 3 countries, South Sudan, Niger, and Chad. This mission was the second of its kind following last year's high-level visit to Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of Congo. In reporting back to the Security Council at that time, marking the first time this Council had heard a briefing on women, peace and security in relation to a country situation, members of the Council requested further trips of this nature. A request that I am pleased to report we took forward, and I would like to thank the governments and the people of South Sudan, Chad, and Niger. In Niger and Chad, we were joined by the Foreign Minister Wallström in her capacity as President of the Security Council for July. At various points on the trip, we were also joined by our senior UN colleagues, including the Executive Directors of UN Women, UNFPA, the SRSGs on sexual violence in conflict, the Great Lakes, the UN Office Central Africa, and the Sustainable Energy for All. We were also joined by the DSRSG for UNOWAS and the Special Advisor on the Sahel. I was very proud to lead a delegation in which women made up the majority. Our purpose was to highlight issues of women, peace and security and development. Throughout the trip, we met with women's civil society leaders, community representatives, as well as religious and traditional chiefs. We visited many development projects and then met with the local authorities, senior government officials, and heads of state to discuss the key challenges as well as opportunities, and we also conveyed the voices and messages that we heard from women. 4 issues resonated most dramatically. The first, the need to address the stark costs that women and children pay for conflict. This was particularly evident in South Sudan, where we visited women in protection of civilian sites who spoke of the violence they faced both inside and outside the camps. It was also born out of the stories of women in rural areas of Chad, where the impact of Boko Haram has resulted in insecurity, loss of family members, and the increased use of female suicide bombers. Second, we heard a universal and increasingly frustrated call by women for greater inclusion, representation, and participation in all areas of society. They demand greater participation in decision-making. In South Sudan, they ask that their voices be heard in Juba, Addis Ababa, and Khartoum in the peace process. In Chad and Niger, they advocated for implementation of legislation on a quota for political participation and the recognition of their role in the economy and in preventing violent extremism. Greater representation at the community level is a further imperative. The women religious leaders that we met in Chad are a really powerful voice against gender equality and against the attacks on women's rights that are such a core part of the terrorist group's strategy and identity. By teaching the Quran, they are sending a message that the Quran and Islam are both for men and women and is a religion of peace. Women are also seeking greater inclusion in the economy. In the Bole region of Lake Chad Basin, we saw multiple roles women fisherwomen were playing in maintaining livelihoods in the absence of men who had been killed, and in building community resilience in the face of environmental degradation and insecurity caused by the Boko Haram insurgency. Such models, if scaled up, have the potential to generate economic dividends for the country. We reminded leaders that inclusion is not a women's issue, it's a whole-of-society issue. Third, there is a clear need to keep countries experiencing fragility today from becoming failed states tomorrow. In Chad and Niger, the countries are dealing with challenges that are largely not of their making, including insecurity that originated beyond their borders and climate change that respects no borders at all. Despite their own constraints, they are among the world's most generous hosts of refugees. But the impact on their economies and development aspirations have been profound. The president of Niger, for example, presented to us his Renaissance plan to meet the basic needs of the country's population. But these have been hampered by the fall in uranium and oil prices and the expenditure that they make on security. Security, therefore, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, comes at a price. All too often, it comes at the expense of development. In this context, it is critical that we all step up. This means urgently increasing our budget support for development in these and other fragile countries. It is a matter of human dignity first and foremost, but it is also a matter of peace and security. Investment in development must be transformative. It must support not only scaled-up integrated projects, as we saw in Niger when we visited the UN program that brought together health, nutrition, agriculture, water and sanitation alongside women's empowerment, recognizing the context of climate change. I'm confident that the reforms that we are pursuing in the UN will provide the necessary space to scale up such interventions. Excellencies, with today's conflicts greater in both number and complexity, it is more important than ever to find the path to peace building and sustainable development for all. Across the 3 countries we visited, it is evident that women can be the agents of a new and necessary approach, a new narrative, a new paradigm. We sensed during our visit an increasingly pressing need to operationalize the policies, frameworks, and agendas that we have in place. For 18 years, this Council has debated the agenda of women, peace, and security annually during thematic debates. Once a year, we assert that gender equality is foundational to stability and peace, but rarely have we moved beyond the principles. Now we believe is the time to move from frameworks to action. Investing in peace now in this region will bring lasting global dividends for all. With Resolution 1325 and the 7 resolutions that build on it, we have the necessary commitments. We have tools such as a recalibrated UN integrated Sahel strategy. We must now bring these to life and engage further in alignment, encouraging that between the support plan for the Sahel, Agenda 2030, Agenda 2063, and, most importantly, national plans. The cost of inaction is high. Poverty, weak institutions, and gender inequality, including the abhorrent practices such as child marriage, are creating an environment ripe for extremism. Thank you again for supporting such joint missions, which we believe contribute greatly to advancing the work of this Council. And we look forward to working together to draw the appropriate lessons towards building lives of peace, security, and equality for all. I thank you.